Hi everyone and welcome to this week's episode where today we've got something different for you. We've got one of our landlords, Ellen, talking about how and why she became a landlord and how we feel that this may relate to a lot of our listeners out there. So, Mike, what are you looking forward to on this one?
Yeah, it's a case study, effectively, and it's something a little bit different of falling into being a landlord, or becoming an accidental landlord, or it being a case of using your property to actually mean you can move your life on, rather than the standard buy-to-let because I've got some pension cash hanging around. So it's an interesting story. I think it's something that, as you said, someone can really relate to.
I think it's definitely a different story, and I think it may benefit a lot of those that are sort of considering a move, and I think it's something that may potentially help those listeners out there. So, you ready?
Yeah, absolutely, let's bring her on. Welcome along to another episode of the Landlord podcast with me, Mike, and Tristan from the Landlord page. Today, joining us is Ellen, one of our landlords. Now, Ellen has become one of our landlords within the last 6 months, and we're going to go through the story of why she became a landlord, renting out her own home to move in with a new partner. So, Ellen, firstly, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, as we said, you become a landlord in the last 6 months. The term accidental landlord gets bandied around. I think nobody finds a tenant by accident. So the definition maybe is slightly wrong. But what brought you into being a landlord?
So my flat that I lived in, it was my second home, and it was never bought with the intention of being a buy-to-let. That's where I lived for 6 years, actually. And I am now a landlord. I'm renting it out whilst I rent a property with my partner. We both decided to rent our flats out instead of selling.
So potentially there should be a different word than landlord or landlady.
Landlady.
It's a grandiose term in what it is, which conjures up the idea of the investor who owns tens of thousands of properties with a Bentley and lots of rental income, where in the true term of it, the majority of landlords are someone in your position who has an opportunity to do something and needs to do it in a certain period of time. And the sensible option, as you said, is to keep hold of your property rather than sell it for a short-term move. So, becoming a landlord this time round, where did you find the ease, the pain points, the problems?
It was fairly easy in one sense, I think. The emotional attachment to it being my home was, that was kind of gone a bit because we were embarking on a new chapter. So there was something nice and exciting to look forward to. The only stressful thing I found was trying to get 2 flats ready for tenants to move in whilst trying to find our own to rent. Coordinating that was a slight nightmare. But moving the tenant in, finding the right one, having the place ready, that's all been fairly simple so far.
So there's a process to go through. There's the bureaucracy, firstly, of speaking to your management company, your mortgage company, your insurance company, that kind of thing. And as you said, probably the biggest pain at the moment is the opposite. It's really easy to find a tenant for a property, but if you're renting yourself, you put yourself into that same shark tank of having to find something yourself. So maybe as a tenant, how did you find it? How did you find you were treated by letting agents when you were explaining what your plans were and how you were doing it?
So interesting, actually. I wasn't quite prepared of how tough it would be to find somewhere to rent. We've got 2 cats, and despite it supposed to be a lot easier for people with pets now, it's not by and large. They don't give a reason, you can't, it's just a no. I think when you're against 15 other people who don't have any pets, you're the bottom of the queue. So we had to be quite I looked on Facebook Marketplace actually in the end to try and find something, and I found a private landlord who still used an agent to find him a tenant, but I met the landlord personally, and I explained our situation, that we were both homeowners, what we were doing, and we both had just started new businesses as well. So on paper we weren't the best tenants. 2 cats, no real income, we needed a guarantor, that kind of thing. But meeting the owner, we could explain our situation, and I think the fact that we were homeowners renting what was once their home they're in a way accidental landlords as well, and it all worked out quite well. But yeah, we really had to sort of dig around to try and find something.
So it's lucky you met the homeowner to explain
Yeah.
the situation, because he was going through an agent, like you said. He wasn't having much luck. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I think finding some common ground, whether it be with the agent or with the landlord, is where you can actually build a bridge and a relationship with someone that they see you as a trustworthy person, or they see something of you in them. That means that they actually want to help rather than just push you away. And traditionally, I think what people find with a letting agent is if it doesn't fit the box,
Yeah.
they're just going to be a gatekeeper for you to struggle to progress with. So you managed to find the property finally through digging and through meeting people and persuasion. The nitty gritty, the financials, what makes it work for you to rent out your own home and rent as a tenant?
It made complete financial sense, is the best way to put it. What we pay to rent a 2-bedroom house together is less than what our combined rental income on our apartments is, and we've both got apartments, so there are service charges and ground rent fees and that kind of thing to consider. But yeah, I think it's about a third, about 30% that we save until doing that. So it made complete sense to combine the incomes and rent both out.
So whilst you're taking the hassle, financially, you're actually in a stronger position because you're making the profit from 2 houses and putting that into one set of bills, one set of council tax, all of those things that work along it. So from an investor's perspective, it's actually a good policy to take.
Yeah, very much so.
On purpose or by chance?
Oh, there was lots of spreadsheets. Lots of spreadsheets.
Mike loves a spreadsheet.
Yeah. I think it worked out in actual kind of pounds and pence. We'd end up saving between us about £900 a month on our outgoings, which is a lot. So it was a bit of a no-brainer, actually, when we thought about it.
Yeah, it's a real success story of how you can utilise a property that is potentially no longer suitable for you. Because, if it was, one of you would have moved into the other's property and that kind of thing and rented the other, but really utilise that, show the low interest rates that we have at the moment and the high rentals, and make that work for you. And the lettings market is littered with these kinds of stories, but they probably get drowned out by the traditional buy-to-let stories and the HMOs and the make money fast, that the majority of landlords just need to rent out what was potentially their own home in the first place in order to get something done, because it can't sit empty for 6 to 12 months, 24 months with a mortgage on it and service charges and council taxes.
Yeah, no chance.
So it's a really interesting one. I mean, Tristan, as a frontline letting agent, where do you see people? Do you see people coming in doing this all the time? Do you see people who are scared of this kind of situation?
I think, like you said, with rates being so low at the moment, I think it makes sense for those that are maybe looking to upsize and have considered letting their properties and maybe haven't been able to find in the meantime because the market's been so buoyant for such a long period of time. It could be a great stopgap potentially. For example, moving out until they find somewhere to upsize but continue renting their property out. Especially if it's working out profitable for yourself.
Yeah.
If that's currently their family home, for example, letting that out, going into rental for a period of time, because let's be honest, properties that people are looking to upsize to aren't coming up very often, and when they are, you get multiple people offer on it. So it's certainly something to consider.
It's something that we are certainly considering longer term as well. I think for us, we had to, for a short period of time, both move into one of the 1-bedroom apartments, and we were glad that we had somewhere else to go. But renting somewhere together, it was a nice common ground for us, so that one wasn't moving into the other's space. And now that's all going well, I'm pleased to report. And we're thinking kind of 2-3 year plan of buying somewhere together. Being in rented means that we've got the luxury of being able to decide, do we keep both? Do we keep one? Do we sell both before we buy? And it compartmentalises the whole process. I just think at the moment trying to buy and sell at the same time isn't even possible for a lot of people. So we've kind of got moving into rented, despite the hassle and the admin that goes with it, is given us so many more options to be able to consider.
It means you can do these things at your own pace. And we were discussing off camera just how hard it is for people to buy a property at the moment, because you can see the same 10 buyers at 2, 3, 4 different open houses, and the only person that changes is the person who managed to secure the last one disappears, and a new person fills that register in that sense. And people who have got 2 flats to sell in order to buy a house are just not going to get considered at the moment. Unfortunately, it's just too difficult. It's too much hassle for people. So if you're able to make those decisions and then do that one at a time, it will make life much, much easier. And that's not to forget, we're talking about a monthly cash flow here, which is beneficial. It helps save. But we're also looking at a capital appreciation on properties, because if we rented these 2 properties 6 to 9 months ago, there's no doubt within that 6 to 9 months of riding the market, you've got 2 properties, both increasing in value. So 2 properties increasing in value, when you're eventually going to look for 1 or 2 properties themselves, you're at least keeping up with the market, potentially doubling the market, which again is one of the things that people who are buying to let look for. Is if you own 1 property and it's going up in value, or your next door neighbour's house is also going up in value, so you're not actually any further ahead. But if you own more than 1, then you're going to outpace the market and eventually use equity to buy a property rather than your own money or borrowings. So it's working in more than one suit.
But in an absolute worst case scenario, if things don't work out in the relationship, you've got a property to go back to.
Still got somewhere to go back to. Absolutely. It's why I've still got it.
Let's hope Lewis isn't watching or listening this far into the conversation for the safety net situation. Where do you see it, the situation going long term? Not in your relationship, but as a landlord.
Yeah.
3 to 5 years down the line.
I wouldn't say I've got the bug as per se, but it's very nice having a second revenue income stream, and definitely something I'd like to keep. Even in my mind, when we were throwing ideas around about what do we do in kind of 2-3 years when we're ready to buy, do we buy a house or do we stay where we are renting if we can and buy another rental, buy another buy to let property and start that way. So it's really opened up my eyes. I'm sure it's not always going to be easy. We're both lucky that they're fairly modern, easy maintenance places. But it's definitely sort of opened our eyes as to whether maybe that's another route to go down. I'd be reluctant to ever let mine go now. I'd never move back into it, hopefully. But I'd be reluctant to give that up as a revenue income more than anything.
It's an interesting topic of whether you actually need to own the home that you live in, or whether you use your money elsewhere in order to pay for that to live for free. It's a totally different situation, but a similar story. I lived overseas for 9 months a long time ago, in my 20s, and I had 2 properties rented out. And I managed to fund my way basically around the world on rental income and interest-only mortgages, whereas other people were scrimping and saving in $5 a night hostels. I found that by the end of the month, I hadn't actually spent anything because I was living in a slightly different economic climate to the UK, where prices were lower. But if you can have 3 buy-to-let properties paying the rent on your property to where you're free, then it's a really interesting method of doing things that a lot of people wouldn't look at, Tristan.
Well, it's a win-win situation, like you said. It goes back to one of our other podcasts, actually, with yourself, where you said about exactly that topic, that you use the cash flow from the rental property to pay for the nice things that you have in life, your car and so forth. So if you can do it, why not? At least explore the option.
So I think, as we said, buy-to-let isn't a straightforward, I've got 50k in the bank, so I'll look for a 1-bedroom property, rent it out, and hopefully make some money off it. There's different ways of skinning a cat, which we shouldn't say because Ellen's got to. So we can keep the skin on the cat. But it is an interesting topic of you don't specifically have to go out and buy a property to rent. You can leave the property that you're currently in and then go and buy somewhere else. You can rent yourself and use the equity to buy different properties. If that is something that actually triggers your imagination or some options for you, as ever, contact Tristan at the Landlord page or myself, Mike. Hopefully I have my voice back by then. We look forward to hearing from you. If you're listening, please drop a comment on any of our socials or on our podcasts and we'll get straight back to you. Until next time, I'm Mike, that's Tristan, and thanks Ellen for being our guest.
Thanks for having me.
I'm flicking through YouTube and through Spotify. I don't think there's a podcast or a video channel on YouTube that landlords could land on where they're not being sold something.
I mean, it'd be the first time any estate agents ever asked that question, but why not ask that question to a wider audience?
Estate agents have the knowledge there, but they don't seem to share it.
You can do different episodes based around someone that wants an exit plan or someone that's just starting their portfolio.
The rules change every year,
Yeah.
but why not just open the floor out and just say, well, is property even the best investment out there?
And tax advice is a big thing, especially with everything that's changed, capital gains tax and obviously your stamp duty costs that you need to pay and whatnot. People don't realise what they need to prepare for.
We build a podcast and we build a YouTube channel, somewhere that landlords can go and they feel they're not being sold to, but they're just getting quality advice.